welcome today, Bridget. We're just going to get right into this for joining us on the Baobab project, where we look at health and wellness through the lens of the Baobab fruit. And so the best way to do this is first start off by checking out this thing. So you asked us right before this, is this legit the fruit? And people don't believe us, but
That's it.
it's literally powdered fruit inside.
That's crazy. Yeah, I thought maybe it was like a dried virgin or something, you know?
Well, that's the hardest part, is when we try to explain to people that when you're consuming it in like our product, it's powder and we didn't change it, so you're getting the raw fruit or the fruit in its natural form, like doesn't make sense. Like there's no way to write it correctly. There's only like if you show it. So
Yeah, it's actually nothing what I thought the fruit would look like. I was thinking more of like a pomegranate type thing.
yep,
You know?
yeah,
So,
something like less. I don't know. There's not. It's a oblong. It's funky.
yeah.
But it's pretty amazing. So I want to introduce you a little bit. So I'm going to read a little bit, but I'm also going to kind of let you introduce on the back end. So you have I'm not going to go MS, RDN, LMNT, 18 years of nutritional counseling experience. And then we just talked about this before, so I know this. You got your bachelor's from Northwest Missouri State.
Correct.
And then that master's from UNL, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I kind of want you to explain the journey of how you got into this, but you were introduced to me through David Newton and their facility, and I guess you work directly with them, but I kind of explain what you do overall and then how it started to morph into working with them.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is exciting. I listen to a ton of podcasts, so being on this side of it and, getting interviewed as the professional is kind of a cool thing. So, so all those letters behind my name more or less is just that I'm a registered dietitian, meaning I went to, all the schooling to become that and take my boards to be able to educate people daily. So I haven't always worked with gastrointestinal health, actually. My career first started where I was more in women's health and did a lot with like pregnancy and that kind of stuff. And when I was actually approached probably closer to like 13 years ago to kind of get into gastrointestinal health, it was actually, to be honest, something I was like, I don't really know. I don't gut health. Talking to people about like their gut problems and bowel movements, like this sounds kind of weird. But unbeknownst to me, actually is like the true passion that I didn't know I had, which is really cool. And I think it's because it's such a rewarding area of nutrition, because when people have gut distress, they oftentimes, their lifestyle becomes very debilitating. And so helping them with their nutrition and changes is a pretty cool thing to witness as they go through and make some of these modifications. So
I feel like you're on the cutting edge of that too, though. I've talked to some of these microbiome specialists, and they've been studying it for 20 years, but nobody even thinks about it. It's only been like the last 5 years. So I feel like you were probably talking to people 13 years ago, and they were like, how does this matter? Why does this matter? Did it?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
Was it weird to even get into it? Because I guess, how close is women's health in the way that you would approach it to gastrointestinal health and talking to patients?
Well, I think the thing that, maybe it's because I'm just, honed into gut health and whatnot, but I truly believe like the gastrointestinal tract is kind of like the core of the body, and so it affects every single part of our being, whether or not people know that or not. And I think I can really say that and attest to that because I see it every day in practice, right? I see people who, maybe they have some different like gynecological issues, like let's say endometriosis or something. Well, their gut's going to be completely affected by that, right? Through hormone shifts and all this. So there's like this direct link, again, 13, 15, 20 years ago, there is so much disconnection, right? Not a lot of that. And I think it's just now starting to surface of trying to maybe kind of bring more of this connective approach to kind of wellness maybe. And that's kind of where my really passion lies too. But yes, me talking about gut stuff when I was doing, women's health when I first started, there wasn't as much connection, right? I think some of that has evolved just as more of this, kind of just the research too, right? Time and information.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is a lot of the research that you had to do on your own to really, how much with studying dietetics did you gather into the gut health component versus have you researched over the last 20 years to really educate yourself about it? Because like I feel like that connection has only been made in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, is a lot of you searching it out and learning it?
Yes, I would say for sure, like when I was in college and learning this, it was kind of those things where it's like maybe a lecture, maybe just a little more, but like just very brief, basic, right? Like this is a part of the gastrointestinal system. I think about if I were to go back and take some of my college courses again, like truly the digestive tract itself, right? And really like there's so many organs involved and it's super complicated. And again, the kind of microbiome piece only in the recent years. So through going to different conferences, kind of specializing in, just the gut arena itself, it's just more like the recent research that has occurred, and kind of learning and reading and, again, attending different conferences and webinars and things like that.
Yeah, it's like a frontier that I feel like most people don't know where to start. So I think that's where I want to start. Even like if I were to go to you, you get sent a lot of patients, or even without a patient, just somebody that's not yet a patient that's going to come to you. What I was intrigued by when we had talked before is that food is medicine, whole foods, things like that. But I go to you and I say, hey, I have gut problems. How do you start that process? Like, how does somebody in your, like, because you're really focused on building it back up through nutrition, correct?
Right.
It's like you have this probably holistic approach. So how do you start that approach?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when people come to me, they've either maybe they've gone to their primary or their gastrointestinal doctor, and they have been through a gamut of different tests. And I oftentimes get those patients or clients who come who literally say, my doctor tells me everything's okay, right? They've done all these tests, and they've done like things to make sure, like to rule out like maybe inflammatory bowel disease, things like Crohn's, colitis, celiac. So like structurally everything's looking okay, but these people aren't okay. And so it's not like I'm the last straw, but kind of in a way they come to me and they're like, I need help. Like I don't leave my house because I am afraid that I'm not going to make it to the next, down the street to get to a bathroom. I mean, it gets really, really crazy, the stories I've heard. And so the nutrition piece of it is that, a lot of my people are coming to me kind of like, desperation's a very strong word, but like just kind of, again, just distraught, right? And just needing that guidance. And so the power of nutrition and like what we put into our body. I tell people all the time, like nutrition affects every single human being, whether or not they pay attention or know how to pay attention or want to pay attention, right? But just when we start paying attention and have awareness to like the positive power it can have on us, like people's lifestyle changes, right? Their life, their mental well-being, their physical well-being, every component of them can improve.
It makes me think about something I was talking to a guy the other day which is just how most of us are stressed. And so most of us, there's 3 components that I had never really thought about, but it's usually generally that you feel like you don't have time for something, you don't have the skill for it, or you don't have the energy for it. And I feel like diet and nutrition is the one area that a lot of times we lack all 3. And it ends up affecting all 3 at the same time. It's like this circular issue that we run into where we don't put the time in, we don't have the skill to make better food for us, and then we generally, because of that, also don't have the energy to continue to do it. But then that's the reason that we're also not feeling good in the first place.
For sure. I tell people it's like kind of like this twisted web or like this super complicated puzzle. And I mean, nutrition doesn't have to be as difficult as what society makes it. I think there's so much out there, and again, since it affects every human, anybody can be like, this is the next magic thing or whatever. And one of my main goals in my practice and working people is to like try to simplify nutrition down, right? It doesn't, again, like eat real food. I mean, start, eating wholesome food that just nourishes our body. Like the power of real energy, when I say that, again, just like eating fruits and vegetables, some of the most simple things that the vast majority of people in our nation are not consuming these foods, right? We're eating a super ultra processed, highly processed food because it's the easy choice, right? It's the convenient choice.
I think I want to touch this because this is what I've been thinking about this last week and a half. We got into an accelerator program, and they're really working on talking about or thinking about problems that we face and in general, like how are people trying to solve them now, or how could they potentially want to solve them, or what's the real core that they're looking for. And I think about when they go to you, right? They're like, listen, I got no problem. Like on the sheet, I'm fine. I don't feel good, right? And I think of, especially, mine's from a coffee standpoint, or I think of like a caffeine standpoint, how caffeine blocks your brain from understanding that you're actually tired. So you're not focusing on it. And you said real energy, which I think gets misconstrued as stimulants always. And I think it's a really interesting, maybe it's because of the way that my mind's shifting, right? To think about it is also helping me. But like energy is more than... Everything in America is like stimulant. Like, how are you getting your energy in some stimulation? But when I hear you say real energy, I think of how do the micro and macronutrients produce energy in your body, like, or the basic one is how do you turn, right, like it's sugar to ribose to ATP, right? That idea of like how do you get real energy. So how do you explain it to people to understand that their energy is going to come from their food, or how do you break it down to be simple for them? I guess what would be some of that process?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I talk about a lot is that, like, so all food gives us energy, right? Whether, no matter kind of what capability or capacity, food gives us energy. And so I talk a lot about, like, the quality of energy, you know, that certain foods give us. And so a lot of it, too, is, like, the purpose. Like, certain foods are more purposeful. They serve more purpose. So, you know, things with micronutrients, meaning the foods that contain your vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, all these different things that, like, we can't feel that when we eat those things maybe immediately, but like at the core, like at that cellular level, you know, everything is working so much more efficiently when we feed our body these types of nutrients, and again at that like very finite level that you know, when you eat an orange, yes, generically we know that has vitamin C maybe, right? But we're not thinking about like all the other potential benefits that these foods are giving us. And so real food, or that real energy, is really foods that kind of have more like purpose or power behind them, is how I look at it, right? So like caffeine is this, you know, like you're saying about stimulant, like it's so true. We're all about like, I don't have time, just what's going to get my energy going so I can keep rolling for the next few hours, right? Well, we just end up continuing to like use it as a crutch, right? So we don't want to crash and burn, so we keep using that. Well, it's just fake energy. It's kind of like we're just band-aiding the problem, is what oftentimes, right? So if we were actually to stop and nourish our body and maybe give our body more of these, you know, kind of wholesome, nourishing, rich foods, we could feel naturally more energized for hours, right? Without having to have like the stimulant that's kind of masking really what's at the core.
Yeah, well, I also think it's another cycle where you then continue to mask it, and then you can't sleep, and then you end up being more tired, and then you're in the same position over and over, where you're like, you're always chasing your tail from an energy standpoint. So do when you meet with people a lot, I mean, I guess you have so many stories that would be all over the map of what people go through. Like, and I can't even fathom the things. I mean, David told me some of them. We talked to some of the microbiologists and then the microbiome specialists, where the things that they were saying that people go through, I didn't realize that was the like irritable bowel disease would be, as far as like, I don't want to leave my house. And then that comes down to self-esteem. It comes down to this, like you become a bigger life coach than just dietetics, correct?
Absolutely.
And so
yes.
I feel like your first session is a lot of therapy / nutritional therapy. Is that?
You're spot on. A lot of people, when I tell them like kind of what my, you know, they say, what's like a day like, you know, in your office? And I tell them, they're like, you're like a therapist? And I said, yeah, it's food therapy. It really is, because food affects our whole being, you know? And so, and what I mean by that is that if you eat something and all of a sudden, you know, within 30 minutes, an hour, you're in the bathroom, and then in the bathroom for another half hour or back and forth, right? That affects the rest of your day, the tasks you have to complete. You know, you're again all of a sudden going to be more stressed, because then worry sets in, and so all these things. And so yeah, I mean, I have to, you know, one of the things that I really value when I work with clients is like giving them time. They just want somebody to like listen, and then of course they want answers, but they need that time to like talk about how awful they're feeling and how it's affecting their lifestyle. And then that's the cool thing, is that I can give them, you know, tips that I help them understand like what's happening internally, and then I can give them, you know, suggestions if they're really overwhelmed. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 things I say, you know, go home and maybe limit these foods or try these types of patterns. And like 8-9 times out of 10, people come back feeling somewhat or significantly improved. It's so powerful, and it's something that's not looked at, right? So I love to get down to like the core of why we feel the way we do. And nutrition or lack thereof is usually a huge piece of it that isn't talked about. You know, we're a world of band-aiding our problems, and I say like my passion is really truly helping people understand the why to their problems, right? And I might not have all the answers, but then I can collaborate with other professionals that maybe can help kind of gather this, you know. So if you're super stressed and you're not taking care of that piece, your gut's going to be a mess maybe, right? Well, then maybe you need to work with a psychologist or somebody who can help you from that mental aspect to kind of help learn stress management skills. So it's very multifaceted, you know, but nutrition is kind of at the core, and then things kind of like branch out from there. I believe that, at least.
No, we wouldn't have created a product that was based around a whole food if we didn't think that nutrition played a part. Obviously, also with ours, we don't tell people, because I think that's one of my favorites is like the new magic pill, the secret, whatever. It's like taking simple steps, but that's the hardest part. But it's funny when you do achieve a small, simple step in a day, how better you feel to take the next step the next day, or if you can maintain that for 3 to 5 days to 10 days or whatever. I hadn't thought about, I mean, I do think about it, but now that I'm thinking about this, and this is like my therapy session, it's really interesting from a nutritional standpoint. Like, I come to you and I'm like, listen, my gut hurts. And you're like, well, that might not be your problem. Let's start with like, why are you feeling like this? How are you feeling like, what do you do in your day? What's going on in your life? And all of a sudden you realize there's a lot of factors that are presenting these problems or creating these problems.
For sure. A lot of times I tell my clients, they come into me, I mean, the vast majority of the time, there's something probably nutritionally related as to like why some of their problems or all of their problems are occurring, right?
Are generally most people's in the same realm, or is it pretty across the board because of our diets? Or I mean, I feel like our diets are really similar in a way, but they're like a lot of the problems, are they pretty similar? Or are they pretty along the spectrum?
They're similar, but they're really individualized. So the thing about nutrition is I can give like basic, like the initial session is like a lot of the same. I mean, I repeat myself a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm talking, meaning individually versus like in the masses. And so, yes, I'm educating maybe on the similar concepts, but then after that, it's honing it individually and then helping a person understand like their daily patterns and how maybe they need to maneuver their routine throughout the day, or how they balance food choices out to actually make their digestive system work better, right?
Got
So
it.
it's kind of, I don't know if that answered your question, but it's more like, okay, here's like everybody.
Well, explain some of those. Yeah, explain how you see the basic principles. Like what are your basic core principles that you start with, I guess, or do you have a couple that would make sense? I don't know if you want to present them, but like you say, come in like this is at least the first part that I believe, right? Which is I guess that'd be the question.
So again, I mean, if somebody's coming into me with like, let's say they're having altered stool patterns. Okay, I know people get really weirded out by talking.
No. This is where this podcast is all about talking about your poop.
Yeah,
how long
okay. Because people come to me and it's just funny because sometimes people are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm telling you about my poop." I'm like, "Listen, it's like me asking what you had for breakfast. I don't really care, right?
Yeah.
It's because it's something we all do, and for some reason we build up this whole like, complex with talking about it. So I love that you're cool with talking about poop.
I'm like the opposite. I love it so much now because of we have. Baobab has 50% fiber, right? And then I didn't know that fiber was this important. I mean, I played college and professional sports. I knew that we needed to have protein. I knew that we needed to have some carbohydrates. I didn't understand the value of fiber, and I didn't understand the value of these bulking agents to help you and what it could do from the bacteria. I mean, I just learned a lot of this even still.
Yeah.
It's like how it changes the bacteria in your stomach, how it moves through your intestines, how it helps you go to the bathroom, but how that helps your entire digestive system work better, right? It's like this was never a part of it. So now I'm fascinated because what your stool tells you is, are you dehydrated? Do you have enough fiber? Do you have all these certain nutrients? Like all these different things that, most of us don't pay attention to. But what's cool is it's one of the few things that you can do that it sounds gross. You can actually look at it and see, is it looking all right or is it not, right? Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, and some people actually, they come to me and they say, I've had diarrhea for 20 years. I mean, I hear that all the time.
What?
I had a client literally this sounds crazy, but for 50 years, she had never had normal bowel movements. And this will just kind of solidify why I think nutrition is a huge piece or the piece of it because, and she came in and highly stressed, anxious, just overwhelmed and not feeling well, right? I mean, how can you not, if you have loose stools for that long, you have major nutrient deficiencies going on, right? Like if your body's just expelling all of that and you are having that loose stool, like, you're going to be very deficient in lots of different, parts of the nutritional status. So my point being is that she was really overwhelmed and like me telling her and educating her on like, okay, this is probably what's happening on from an absorption issue in your gut or lack thereof. And then, so I broke it down and gave her like, okay, I want you to go home and I want you to focus on, trying to like eat, a little bit more smaller frequent meals. I want you to kind of cut out these 3 or 4 foods that she was eating a lot of that based upon just digestion and absorption. There are certain types of foods based on the carbohydrate structure that can not absorb as well in the gut. So I had her take away like literally 4 or 5 things. And she came back in a month, so 4 weeks, and she had no diarrhea.
Can you elaborate on the carbohydrate that don't digest well? Because I'll give you a context. So there are specific plants. Oh, I'm gonna butcher this, but I was talking to Randy Benson, who's a microbiologist, but then now he studies the microbiome through plants. And there's certain plants that have, so it's like sticky rice has a higher, I can't say it, but it has a less fiber content and a higher carbohydrate content. Whereas like there's like sorghums that he was saying have a really high fiber content, a low carbohydrate content, and what it does for your body and how it can potentially help blood sugar levels, how it helps your microbiome. So I guess my question is like, what were some of those and how does that carbohydrate not sit in your system or what happens to it?
Yeah. So there's this whole kind of spectrum that I work a lot with, and it's kind of older terms. It's called like functional gut disorders. The newer kind of terminology is actually disorders of the gut-brain interaction, and so DGBIs is kind of what it is. And so functional, it's just more kind of comprehensive than just talking about the word functional. So more or less functional, very simply put, means malfunctioning gut. Okay, so that's the category of people who don't have any type of like bowel disease going on, but they have more like this irritable bowel, or again, they have this, irritable bowel is kind of this umbrella where a lot of different types of dietary intolerances fall underneath. And so sometimes people are like, oh, I have irritable bowel. I'm like, well, that's just kind of like give us this idea. And then we got to filter through and figure out like underneath that, like what actually is happening.
It's really broad.
It's super broad.
It's like all encompassing, and it's your job for the next part.
Right, but up to like almost a quarter of the population struggles with it. And so it's a piece where if you go and then your doctor says, no, you're okay, but you're not okay, going back to our earlier points, is that this is where a lot of that kind of this disorder of the gut-brain interaction is occurring, right? So functional, again, simply put, malfunctioning, where a lot of like different malabsorption conditions can occur. So like there are these different types of carbohydrate structures. The common word.
Get into it. No, get into it. You're fine.
People, FODMAPs is probably.
We're gonna get into this because I actually know this. I'm gonna say it, but my ex-girlfriend was a dietitian. That's when I lived in Australia, and so she actually got me on the FODMAP.
Okay, Australia is the place where it all started, actually.
Got it. Okay, so we're going to go into detail on this one because I didn't really pay attention at that time. That wasn't a time in my life that I was worried about it, but I know the importance of this because it worked when I did it. But so there's certain.
So yeah, more or less what happens in the digestive tract is there's certain types of like shorter chain carbohydrates that just based upon the way they absorb and digest in the GI tract. Sometimes they don't break down the way they should. Maybe it's a lack of an enzyme that we're not producing, or it could just be like the carbohydrate structure itself that doesn't absorb. So so think of fiber, right? Go back to fiber. And so there's these types of fiber structures. Fiber is so beneficial. I could talk for an hour just on fiber as you're kind of...
I might make you.
Yeah. And so because it really, like all the most recent research really states how like fiber is, and like from plant-based sources, is literally like this magic. And I don't believe in just one magic thing by any means, but like it's magic that people aren't tapping into, right? So it's like right in front of us, fruits and vegetables, all this stuff, getting something, like drinking a new product that can help us.
You're fine. We as much as we love plugging it, we're okay.
Yeah.
So I think for an example, if you can give me an example, because the one I remember was I struggle with apples.
Yeah.
Is that pretty?
Yes.
Because I feel like it was the combination. Now what I know, which was still nothing compared to what we're about to talk about, knowing what I know is it has a high fiber content, but the sugar somehow with the fiber to me felt like something. And that could be completely made up, but I want to present it because, man, I don't eat apples still because I know what they do to me.
Yeah. So again, when people come in and they have like these functional, a lot of it is developing different types of like dietary intolerances or sensitivities. So this is like way different than like the food allergy. Okay, a sensitivity or an intolerance is more or less the small intestine not more or less absorbing energy the way that it should. Okay.
What does it do instead? Just kind of expel it straight through?
So for example, there's a sugar called let's just use lactose. Okay, lactose is the sugar in milk, right? Up to 70% of the worldwide population actually struggles with lactose sensitivity, meaning that their bodies aren't either producing enough of the enzyme that we naturally make for various reasons over time, age. Again, if you have some of these other GI issues, the body stops making the amount of the enzyme necessary when you consume it, right? So what happens with lactose is that lactose is like think about two tennis balls being like Velcro together is what I say, right? So we actually make an enzyme when we ingest lactose. Our body recognizes this, and then it kind of spits out per se an enzyme that breaks apart these two sugars. If the enzyme's not produced, then that chain of carbohydrates, those two sugars, stay intact, okay, and they travel on down to the small intestine. And if they're not broken apart by the time they get down there, right, then the small intestine is like a foreign object that's present. And so the small intestine says, well, I can't do anything with you. Normally, you should be broken apart so that I can take you and absorb you into the bloodstream to do my normal job, right? Route A, which is the route you want to go. And so if that carbohydrate structure is, sugar structure is down in the small intestine and it's not in the form, it's going to malabsorb it, meaning it's going to push it on through into the colon, right? All those trillions of bacteria in our colon, okay?
No, I'm having vivid memories right now of eating lactose when I'm sensitive.
Okay. So then, so it malabsorbs into the colon, the large intestine, and what happens is the bacteria, it's like actually food for them because it's sugar that's not supposed to be in that, right? It's supposed to be going the other route. And so bacteria feed on the lactose sugar and ferment it excessively and can cause a gamut of different types of symptoms. Typically diarrhea, bloating, gas, you can have nausea, fatigue, you can have joint pain, acne, sleep disturbances, like the list of symptoms that can occur from the small intestine not absorbing things the way that it should is like very, very numerous. It's crazy the things that people come into me and then after we kind of like try to halter the malabsorption and get the kind of gut to work the way that it should or, kind of help it along a little bit more and we prevent that, then those symptoms go away. So kind of crazy.
That was an unbelievable description.
Okay,
so question. You said it's a sensitivity.
Yeah.
So can you increase or reactivate the enzyme to break down lactose?
So the thing about all these sensitivities, and if it's like a lack of an enzyme, is that
so it becomes a complete lack at some point, where it's like almost gone
for like the lactose sugar.
Yeah, for like a lactose.
So like lactase is the enzyme that breaks apart the lactose sugar.
Yep.
Okay, so humans over time, for again various reasons, and like the more like loose stools you would have can actually kind of activate the loss of that enzyme. Okay, so a lot of people, if they have like this chronic diarrhea, will very typically have a lactose intolerance, okay, because again of where the enzymes are in the mucosal lining of our gut and they kind of get like sloughed off and just don't present. So sometimes when they maybe stop and have normal bowel patterns again, the enzyme can kind of come back a little bit and maybe their tolerance can improve. So when a person is intolerant to something, people come to me with like, I have to avoid, I can never eat this ever again. And I get that all the time. And then people get very distraught and they're super stressed out. And they're like, what do I eat? I don't know. I can't eat anything. The internet tells me that I just have to eat like rice and
I was about to say, they probably heard that from the internet.
Yeah, they totally have. And so I have many people that try it by themselves, which is totally fine. And then I say, when you get frustrated, then let's talk, very gently because, everybody has to kind of figure it out for themselves. But the thing about this then is that enzyme production again kind of wavers. So even the most like severely lactose intolerant or sensitive person can probably still have a couple grams of lactose maybe in a setting, but then I work individually to help them figure out what that threshold is, right, if they're willing. So a lot of it is helping them first like get rid of certain things that might be triggering their gut, okay, so like get rid of things with high lactose content, and then we would maybe gradually work as symptoms improve, then we gradually work some of these different foods back in and kind of challenge the load is what I call it. You got to kind of figure out what your body can handle, okay? So lactose is one of like many types of carbohydrates or sugars, because again, carbohydrates turn to sugar, right? Okay. So the idea is that it's one of many types of sugars kind of in this whole FODMAP approach, like we're going to, we can talk about, that the gut is more likely to kind of struggle with absorption. So, when I educate people, usually by the end of the session, I tell them if I haven't overwhelmed them, that I'm not doing my job, because it's getting down to like the very specifics internally that nobody thinks about, right? When we eat, we just think I'm eating a healthy meal and I move on. Well, if that healthy meal all of a sudden is making you in 2, 3, 6, 12 hours, feel super nauseated, bloated, whatever, it's not so much about the healthy choice as it is about like the load that we put in the gut. I don't know if that makes sense.
100%.
So a lot of people come to me and they say, oh, Bridget, but I ate such a healthy meal. I had chicken and an entire steamer bag of broccoli. Like, how come I felt crappy? And I say, well, because you just gave your body like this excessive amount of this type of carbohydrate that is highly fermentable in the gut if you eat too much of it. And so, it kind of is boggling to people because they're eating a healthy food, right? Broccoli is super healthy for us, but it's like the load of what, and in our culture, like the more the merrier, right? Like let's make everything be super large. And that's, I call it like healthily unbalanced. Like when we get something but we're in the extreme, it's still the gut is, if you have a kind of a per se sensitive gut, it's not going to do well. And so I help people try to understand like what they're doing, the load that they're consuming, and how we can like work to better balance so the gut can work better with it.
That's a hard sell. Telling people to be balanced.
That's what I do every day.
No, not in a bad, like, I could not agree more with this completely. That has nothing to do with it. It's just like that idea that balance in everything to me is the key, right? This is why there's no secret sauce. But it's also the same with eating healthy, not eating healthy, how much you consume, all these things. It's just a balance. And it's really interesting to think, because I know what you're talking about with broccoli. It's super funny. I probably do it to myself. Like where you just eat a bunch of broccoli, like, here it comes.
Yep.
And because it's fermenting in the colon. It's colon, correct? It's fermenting in the colon.
Yeah. Intestine, colon, same
yeah.
thing.
And that's what I meant by a hard sell, because it's like, okay, I'm trying to make a change, and then when I do, I want to go extreme to that change instead of like working towards that change sometimes. Like that's probably one of the hardest things. I think I've lived in Austria, Australia, Spain, and I think some of the other countries that I lived in, that was one of the things I felt like they did really well was the balance of things. Like wouldn't have a huge meal, or my balance of this. Like some native dishes are just designed to be a little bit more balanced. Absolutely. Or less of certain things.
Yeah.
When I think about that. So, okay. We gotta start talking about the FODMAPs, because this is like an education part for me, because I do want to know this more. And then I wouldn't say trigger's not the right word, because I'm not triggered. It's awesome. The breaking down or the intolerance, because most people will come to you, same thing. Like I remember I used to sell bagels, and people would be like, I'm a celiac, and I'm like, allergic to gluten, and I'm like, listen, are you allergic to it? Like, do you actually have an allergy, or are you just insensitive? Because the people that were allergic, like you had to put a glove on, that can't be on the same counter. They're going to go into like anaphylactic shock, like right. Completely different. Or does it like ferment in your yes, in your colon?
And that's the first thing I try to do, is really try to help like people understand the difference, because I even, people, I don't think intentionally they're maybe using the word in the way they think they are, but they're just using it incorrectly, right? So I say, listen, like this is not an allergy or not intolerance, or maybe people come into me like, I know I can't tolerate this. And I say, well, do you think it's that? Or maybe it's the combination of like, this and this that you're doing together. And then people are like, oh, I never thought about that, right? So it's educating them, right? Like knowledge is power. So if you don't know something, but then you learn it and then you feel the difference, right? Then we can start doing better. And I use it all the time. Like when you know better, you do better. And so if you all of a sudden, and then if you feel better, then you're way more likely to continue to make these choices. So the whole FODMAP thing, it gets very, very complex. And so I spend typically, an hour with these clients trying to give them kind of the basic understanding of what's kind of happening in the gut. And then again, these food choices are things that we can do. And so, yes, we kind of mock the word balance, but it really comes down to that, right? So, FODMAPs, and I'll explain.
No, explain. You can go deep. Yeah.
Okay.
You're fine.
But the biggest thing is that avoidance of them is absolutely impossible. I mean, if you want to eat anything, I mean, we're not going to get rid of them in our diet, but we're going to learn how to tolerate them better. So, kind of in a nutshell, FODMAPs is an acronym, and very simply put, stands for fermentable sugars. It's different types of carbohydrates. So each letter is a type of carbohydrate structure based upon the molecular unit of the sugar structure. And so the big thing is that, so each letter is a type of carbohydrate, like I mentioned, and it's carbohydrates that, based upon the length of the chain, they don't absorb or they don't break down the way they should in the small intestine. Okay, so what happens is, so for example, the F is fructose. So fructose is a natural sugar. A lot of people come in like, I can't eat fructose. Well, good luck. People come to me all the time with their fructose intolerance, and it's a legit thing. But if you don't eat fructose, you're never eating any fruit ever again, okay? You're not eating a lot of different grains, not eating a lot of different vegetables. I mean, there's a lot of things you just would never eat again. And is that going to help heal your microbiome and get your gut back in balance? Absolutely not, right? Plants are like the thing, and fiber is what actually helps heal your gut. And so we have to learn like how, again, to balance. So fructose is just, again, it's like a ball of sugar, okay? And then when we have a fructose issue, it's more or less that too many kind of balls enter the small intestine at one time. Okay, so we'll go back to your apple example. Okay, why do apples hurt everybody? Okay, well, not everybody, but why people with gut issues. And the issue is because apples are naturally loaded with a ton of fructose sugar. Okay, they're not bad. Apples are not bad. Apples are really great.
Nothing that you're going to say is bad, by the way. I want to prerequisite this
but
because
people are like, I'm never eating apples again. And so because they get the bad rap, if you search FODMAP, apples are the first thing that come up.
There's a guy that I follow on TikTok. It's beautiful. And all he does is say, like, he goes through a session where it's like somebody will go on the internet and be like, air is bad. And then it'll be like, the banana's bad. Then this is bad. And then all of a sudden he's got nothing left. He can't breathe and he can't eat, right? And it's like, so this is what I love about talking to you is because you're like, listen, none of these are bad. It's how we tackle it and understand how to utilize it for ourselves.
For sure. And to clarify, yes, like I truly believe there's like no such thing. We have to get rid of this whole good versus bad mindset with food, right? Because it's not doing any service to the way that we view it. It's looking at it from more of like a nutritionally quality sound type of approach. Mm-hmm. But that was a little side note there. But going back into this is that, so apples, they naturally have a lot of this fructose sugar. And so sometimes if people come into me and they're eating an apple every single day, what they're doing, if they're struggling to absorb fructose efficiently, then they're just kind of loading the gut kind of continuously, right? So the way I kind of discuss this with my clients is if you think about a bucket with a bobber in it, right? Mm-hmm. If you, and let's say there's a little hole at the bottom of the bucket, but if you like fill the bucket up very quickly, right, the bobber is going to get to the top and spill out. Makes sense, right? Okay, so that's the same thing with fructose. Is if you put like a whole bunch of fructose in your gut at one meal, right? That bobber is going to reach the brim and spill out. And when it spills out is when you're actually going to start malabsorbing and having all these GI symptoms that you're experiencing. Okay, so an apple is just one food out of many, many, many that can kind of fill the bucket up more quickly, if you will. Okay, because of the amount of fructose that it has in it. Okay, it also has other FODMAPs besides just fructose in it that we can also talk about. But the idea then is to, rather than getting rid of apples forever, if you were eating them every day, I might tell my client, okay, well, let's cut them back, or let's maybe eat them, once every couple days, or let's eat a couple slices at a time versus the entire apple. Because what you do is you're cutting back on the quantity, which cuts back on the load, right? You're not giving your gut as much fructose in one setting because you just cut back on the quantity, right? Simple.
Which also sounds like once you've spilled over, if you don't spill over, then you're absorbing it actually.
Absolutely. And so again, if people come into me, again, I can't eat. No, you can. This is how you eat it. So I educate them on like how they can eat these foods in a way that actually is going to help heal and better rebalance, if you will. And again, that word is overused, but rebalance the gut microbiome, because not eating apples, if that's something that you really love, right, has more long-term detriment or consequences than trying to figure out how much you can tolerate. Okay, so the biggest thing is every single piece of fruit, has some fructose in it. So the idea is then figuring out, maybe for a while we cut back on like those that are highly loaded, and then kind of get the gut maybe to calm down if it's just fructose that's bothering them. And then if, a lot of times there's more than just fructose in the FODMAP world that bothers people. So it's kind of going through each kind of category of the FODMAP. So again, there's 5 FODMAP sugars in this approach, and many foods contain various types of FODMAP sugars, if that makes sense. And so the idea is based upon what the research has showed us, right? This is evidence-based nutrition stuff that they've researched and like tested food and tested the quantity and amount of these FODMAPs in these foods. And so then I educate my clients on that. Okay, there's these 5 foods that you're eating daily that are kind of filling your bucket up per se, right? Maybe it's because you are flying through your day because you're super busy, you don't eat, and all of a sudden it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you're starving, and then you eat this healthy but gigantic healthful meal, right? And it's too much load for the gut, even if it's healthy choices. And so you eat this, and then maybe a couple hours later into the next day, you actually feel crummy. And it's because the gut has been overwhelmed, challenged, and can't handle the load that you gave it. So the idea is just to kind of work to reduce the FODMAP load. And again, it gets very specific. And that's where it's more individualized, because everybody eats differently, right? Or eating different patterns. They might be eating the same food, but different quantity, different time of day. So it's highly individualized when it comes to that piece.
I feel like I've read a lot of things on the FODMAP, but I've never heard it described that simply. That was really good.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time. And again, I think it's really important to my goals and my clients come to me as I can sense pretty easily if they're feeling anxious and overwhelmed because they don't feel well, and it's pretty evident. So my goal is when they walk away that they feel relief. And I think that is something that I don't just give them a piece of paper and say, go, just follow this. I help them understand why. And I think that is one of the probably the main reasons why there's such great success with helping these people change. Because FODMAPs, I mean, who wants to sit there and follow this diet? It's awful. Like, it's a very restrictive, if you look at a piece of paper, it's a very restrictive, I can't eat anything type of diet, right? I hate that. I'm like, let's figure out how to eat everything, and let's, help people like just have peace or food. Let's help people have food be something that they enjoy and actually doesn't, make them feel well versus unwell. And that's not what happens when we have gut problems, right? Food becomes this like very negative, I eat that, I'm going to feel crummy, right? So then the gut-brain interaction starts, and then we also, we anticipate this unwell feeling, and then it occurs too. So it gets very, very complex. And so if we kind of break it down, help them understand, okay, here's the basic science, okay? Here's what we got to do, but then here's all these other things we have to help you from like a lifestyle management piece.
So then, because I remember this from it was like very restrictive. So what you're saying is like the ultimate FODMAP one would be very restrictive, or no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's like
where you're saying, but you're saying like what you do is you'll go, okay, let's restrict for a little bit, or let's lower for a little bit, and then we test that one. Okay, that one's now, we understand that affects you at this quantity. Then you go to the next one, test at that quantity, something like that, right? I'm just kind of saying what it sounds like. Versus saying, okay, this is the diet, take all these out. Because that was kind of what I ran into. It was like, just take them all out. And I was like, this sucks. Like, I'm not eating anything that I want to. I can't cook half the meals. I don't know how to cook a meal with some of this stuff because I know onions is in the, I don't remember onions is one of them.
Yep.
I was like, how do I cook a lot of meals? I don't even like onions, but they're really
good.
They're
in everything.
They're in everything,
they're
right?
In everything. You can't get rid of them. It's very, very hard.
And so that makes a lot more sense. So you're right. And I feel like, though, this comes from you working with so many people with gastrointestinal issues as well, because I suppose most people that would be working with somebody that focuses on FODMAPs would be gastrointestinal, but I think you have a different holistic approach, which sounds really interesting that I don't think most people have. Maybe they do.
No, and I think that I've always been somebody that believes in like again, just the power of food is medicine. I think, I don't know if it's just our nation or like what we're doing in our world, but there's different parts of the world where we don't have as much like gastrointestinal disease as what we do in the United States. And so then you start looking at our food supply, and then we start looking at all these different things, right? And we're just a heavily processed nation where we're not eating maybe as much. Just I go back to the whole real wholesome approach. And so thinking about, rather than just I come in, these are my symptoms, let's band-aid with the medication. Not that medications, thank goodness we have medications. I'm grateful for all that, for all these different diseases that we're trying to help cure and everything, right? So no diss to that. But I think when it comes down to some of these, especially people with stool pattern changes, bloating, nausea, brain fog, all these like symptoms, right? Like a pill is not going to help that, right? What helps that, it might help it might mask it more, but to get down to like fix the problem, to make it go away, right? That's where it comes to the nutrition and what we put into our body. So that's where like the more of like the holistic or whole being approach, like this integrative approach to it, where we can use kind of like working to mesh, Western and Eastern. I really believe that there's all different ways to help heal people. And so if we kind of tap into the different entities of that, that's where we really can see positive like lifestyle shift and change. And that's what I'm passionate about, right? Like well-being long-term, not just well-being for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, right? If you come into me and you go on a FODMAP diet, you can feel significantly better within days. People come to me again, years of feeling crummy within days. I had a lady yesterday came in, she's like, in 30 days, I've only felt crummy 4 times. She's like, I was feeling crummy every day, like having numerous loose stools a day. And she came back and she's like, I've only had it, and she was super skeptical. She came in, she's like, I could just tell, not really taking what I was having to say. I said, just give it a chance. Take these couple things, right? So these are the stories. So after all these years of experience of doing this and hearing this over and over, it's not me making it up saying nutrition is powerful. It's like, it's through action, right? I'm seeing this because people are doing this and they're focusing in on really nutrition change, and that's what impacts people. So like that holistic, right? Whole being, let's look at this and use food as this medicine piece. It's huge.
So let's tap into 2 things on that. So you partner with your sister, correct, on it's Manifest My Health, which is this approach, correct? And then I would combine that maybe with East and West medicine or East and West tradition. Anyways, start with the Manifest My Health.
So Manifest Integrated Health is actually the company. Manifest My Health is our website. And so the premise of Manifest Integrated Health is actually just to kind of help end the disconnect between mind and body wellness. And so really what we mean by that is that throughout the year, she's a physical therapist here in Lincoln, and I'm the dietitian. And so we were having these conversations of, my patient could benefit you because they're having this. And then I would say, oh, my patient could benefit you because they're having this, right? And so there was this kind of like aha moment years ago where we were sitting together and we're like, we need to create something that can like give people simple tools, right, that can better their well-being from the nutritional, physical, and mental kind of well-being of ourselves, but primary doing that through focus of like how balance, movement, and mindfulness practices within kind of each one of those core elements, if we like work to learn and understand that, how those things, like tools within our own selves, if we can tap into that, like we can become like the best version of ourselves by learning more about how we use those tips and those tools. And so again, and we came about this because we were having patients that we were working with when we started, kind of talking about all this. Like it was through them and them, reporting back to us, seeing that positive change, right? So it's not like this is what we think that is going to help people. It's like it was people were doing these things and we were seeing this, and then it's like, okay, this connective approach. So this whole connecting, right? Connecting the different, all these different parts of our being together, because it doesn't have to be hard. It takes time, right? It takes effort and it takes.
I think the result's not right away, right? Like people want it day one. Like, oh, did you? Well, although this is where I think it connects. So this is my hippie side / sports and nutrition and medicine, is that you can see pretty quick results. So you have we'll just say baseball, because I play baseball. You have a swollen elbow, right? It's not necessarily your elbow that's the problem, right? It's most likely your shoulder, most likely your hip, might be even your ankle. And that's just from the body's part. Then it's the nutrition. What did you actually put in your body in the last month and a half? How have you slept for the last month? How is your stress levels from going to college or whatever? And it's really interesting because then, we always had this debate, like we'll just put ice on the elbow. And I'm like, I don't need ice. I need my shoulder rubbed out. I probably need to not drink a beer the night before. I need to not do this, and then I would feel 1,000 times better. We always look at the final symptom and not the first parts. So I totally agree with this. But how are you guys able to do this? Like, can you only work one-on-one? Because right now, there's a lot of people that talk on the internet. You guys should be rolling this out. This is amazing. Like, what you're talking about is not talked about, because most things are like, don't do this, magic, not magic.
Yeah.
Like, this is very structural. Like, this is very like bottom line, start having balance, and these are the ways to do it. How do you guys implement this right now?
Yeah, so our company began actually back in 2019, and I think with any type of, like I always say, this is like my passion work. So like my day-to-day job is working one-on-one consulting in my power nutrition business, and then Manifest Integrated Health is kind of like this like true innate passion that we both have from our both specialties that we're like kind of growing and working as we go, because we know at the core, like this is good, right? This is good information, because I always say, like my sister and I don't have all the answers, but we're collaborating with like other like-minded professionals that have those have the education expertise, and then kind of again using that connectivity approach to it. And so we've held 5 different community events actually in the past several years, where there are symposiums where they've been anywhere from half day to full day events, where the whole premise is they're very like non-traditional type of interactive like lectures, if you will, to where it's educating people, but in a very just relaxed atmosphere. People come in like workout gear, yoga gear, right? Because there's always a movement portion of it. I curate all the menu and the meals and work with the chef at the facilities that we've had it at to create these balanced and gut-friendly meals to help people understand and learn that when you eat well, like, wow, you can not only have it taste amazing, but you can feel so good afterwards, right? Like you can feel full for several hours, not just feel full and feel hungry in an hour. So, through again them engaging and acting on this throughout the day, very rewarding. And so it's encompassing all different, from the nutritional, physical, and mental well-being, again working and bringing in people who are experts and helping facilitate this event for these people. And so that's what we've done and targeted. This past one that we had, we actually opened it up to men. The first several were just for women, but everybody needs this information.
What was the idea behind the men versus women thing? Do you think, well, okay, I can give you the reason. Men don't seem to take the initiative on this. Would you say is that an incorrect statement, or it might be an incorrect statement, but I don't feel like men are as focused on the holistic approach to their health.
Less likely, and I think it has to do. Yeah, I don't know if it's. I think it's that women are more. What's the word? Like, because it's not even like buying. I don't like the word like buy into this, because you don't need to buy into anything. Like if you can sit here and you can say like, oh my gosh, there's different yoga moves I can do to improve my gut health. Like men have gut problems just as much as women, right? And so if you can sit there and you have some bloating or distension, and you can get down on the floor and do like 5 super basic yoga poses that can make your stomach ache go away.
Why wouldn't you do it?
But I think it's again, yoga. That's only, I know there's all this stigma around a lot of these things, and I think things are improving. And so, but it's that kind of blockade. So we started with women because I think we knew that they were more of a target that like was going to kind of like probably engage a little bit more. But now it's like, no, we want this. This is information that every human needs.
I want to, I'll go on record for this. Can we help organize the next one in the sense of like advertising this? Because I'm totally in on this. Because I want to go to this myself.
Yeah.
And the reason I think about this, I've been thinking about this a lot, even with our product, but even when you discuss things because we do a lot of sampling in places, and we talk to a lot of customers, and we talk to just people about products and health in general. So we're getting not your deep conversation with them, but we get a very quick conversation. And what I find the big difference is, even like say discussing what's in our product versus another product, like guys a lot of time want the result. Mm-hmm. And something like this is the process. And that's what I've found really fascinating, because I feel like more women would prefer the process and understanding that this process can eventually lead to this better result. Whereas a lot of men, like, I just think of right now, the ice baths are huge.
Yes.
So I played enough, I had enough injuries. I tore an ACL, had sports hernia. I sat in an ice bath for like probably 4 years of my life straight. I have zero desire from like the overall wellness to feel better with an ice bath, because I have better endorphin rushes from an ice bath. But that's how I think to me, that's a very different approach. Like a man wants to take an ice bath.
Absolutely.
And then now I'm like, whatever I ate didn't really matter. I just had an ice bath. My endorphins are rushing for the next 4 hours. I'm good. Whereas a woman's like, I went to yoga. I took, this is obviously basic, like broad approach. But it's really interesting because it's changing, right? Guys are getting less, but we still have this like hardcoreness about certain things that we do.
Yeah.
Wake up extra early to like put in the extra 30 minutes of this, and I notice myself still doing it all the time. That might have been my the athletics background. Whereas once I finally focus on doing the things in the moderation, I feel 1,000 times better. A perfect example is my friend in Austria actually I really don't know what he does, but he's like a physical therapist. He's a trainer / physical therapist for like their state government. And we always talked about running, and I could not jog at the pace that would actually burn fat better. He was like trying to explain this to me for 5 to 10 years. Like, you just kind of get your heart rate barely into the zone. There's the zones. And he's like, you're going to burn better. And like my athletic, I couldn't take a jog for like 20 minutes at like a leisure pace. It was always like
hardcore.
And I'm like, but like this is the perfect example. Like it's about, because I do a stretching routine. I'm a big proponent of like chiropractic and things like this. But I'm also been, I test out all sorts of different routines that people do. And so I tested out this one guy's stretching morning routine, and it's been amazing. My sacroiliac, my lower back hasn't gone out for 2 months now doing it. I almost feel like my energy in the morning becomes better, and it's not a hard routine. It's not like extra effort, but it's kind of putting your gut in specific positions. It's moving things. I just think it's really interesting because it's still going to be a long time for us guys. I don't think we're as quick.
Well, and I think you're right on. I think a lot of times, and I think male, female, all, I think it's just, we all want like instantaneous. And I think that's one of the problems. I tell my patients, I'm like, this is a test the patience piece of it, right? Like you want to try to fix things. You have to kind of work things into action, and it doesn't occur overnight. But the beauty is if I always use the word like persistence in my practice. And if you're wanting to achieve something, and if you learn more and you understand the why behind it, sometimes it's more enticing, male, female alike. So I think it's just a matter of time. I think that, one of the things I think of this, kind of some of the trends that happen, right? So like the word mindfulness is really popular. I feel like maybe it's just because I'm around it a lot, so I feel like I hear it a lot more. But I like to believe that like Manifest Integrated Health is helping people understand like mindfulness in a very like real and practical sense, meaning like you can be mindful about, I wake up, I feel tired today. Why am I feeling tired? Okay, well, I went to bed 2 hours later than normal. Okay, well, that affects my, sleep patterns and all these things. So I think it's a lot of it is like I don't know, you can think of yoga and sitting in not yoga, but like mindfulness and sitting in a yoga position and meditating or whatever. And yes, that's a piece of it, but there's so much more of that, right? So that's where I think when we are trying to help people understand these different kind of not values, but kind of core principles that we're trying to get across, it's really tapping into like the true power behind them. I don't know if that makes sense, but just different than some of like the trendy things that are out there, right? Because I think some of these words get very overused and then can, I don't know, kind of put a disturb. Like,
well, they take on a different meaning.
Yeah,
also, you
right.
know, because I think what you're saying is so true. Just paying attention.
Pay attention. Yeah.
It's like, pay attention to yourself, which is, I think, what's really interesting about your approach is it makes people pay attention, because you're just like, hey, you're going to consume a little bit less of this, and once you know to make the change because somebody presented it to you. And the reason I've been thinking about this is we talked about this, but I had a continuous glucose monitor for, it was supposed to be 2 weeks. It only lasted a week because it started to break. So my glucose went to like 350 or something. I was like, I think I'm dead. But I paid attention way more. And it wasn't like I know exactly what it means, but what was cool is like now it's here, and then I can give that information to somebody else and then help me pay better attention to what I'm putting in my body. But it really made me not because, I don't know how to describe this. Like once I became mindful of, because I'm generally mindful of how I feel. Like I wake up, I didn't sleep well. Oh, it's because I did this the night before or this. But having those extra little components was really beneficial, I felt like. And I don't think most people take the time to think about the extra stuff. I mean, maybe they do.
No, I think a lot of what's missing is just that awareness piece, and that's what we talk about. Is like awareness is the foundation, right? And so when you start, becoming more aware, paying attention, if you have data.
Do you have tools? Like, do you have tools of data that you can utilize in any way? Because I like sheets, like you said, like a sheet. There cannot be nothing worse for me for them to like fill out a sheet.
So
you're like fill out your log of every day, right? And it's like, I think that's where people just start losing their mind. I mean, what's been really nice is the apps have been really good for like certain login things. Mm-hmm. Those have been made like a lot easier for people. But do you have tools that you kind of try to utilize? Or have you found a better way to like psychologically get people?
I mean, I believe in like the whole approach of like kind of like this intuitive approach. Like just I think it can be literally as simple as just stopping and paying attention to what your body is telling you. Like I tell it every day, like our bodies tell us so many things throughout the day, and we either can choose to like listen in and then react to that, or we can choose to ignore and just like grind through, right? And so if we actually start paying attention and recognize that, oh my gosh, I've had 3 cups of coffee and I've had nothing to eat today. Why am I jittery? Or why do I feel like I want to take a nap? I have all this caffeine in my system. Whatever your body's telling you, right? And we start, it's not oftentimes very difficult to understand like maybe why, but it's just slowing down. And we're just such a fast-paced go. And I think it's like, I'll get to it later mentality versus if we create, kind of a reestablish, kind of retweak, I talk about pivoting, just pivot where you're at. You don't have to like make these gigantic changes, but if you just think about one thing you can do in a day that can maybe pivot to help you kind of do better, right? Yeah. Add that piece of, fruit to the meal, or add a little bit. I talk about color all the time. Everybody that knows me, it's going to be.
Is that their thing? They
know.
It's like, they know you're saying colorful plate.
Yes, right, colorful plate, because it doesn't. Again, it's like lack of color is a real thing, and so if we just add some color to our plate, it's can add a ton of power, right? And it can be that simple. And obviously it's not always that simple, but those are some of the things. So I think that the change is really hard for anybody and everyone, but I think with nutrition is like when you start feeling a little bit different, right? You can
it's like working out, and people originally work out to lose weight a lot of times, right? So somebody that's overweight starts working out to lose weight, and I think there's twofold things that happen, right? All of a sudden they do feel a little bit like the first week, no way, like you're gonna feel terrible for sure. But if you can get through the first week, all of a sudden you're like kind of craving it because now you have an endorphin rush, or you just have serotonin busting through your system, right? Like there's things that are happening for you. And then the second layer is you look better, or you see weight coming up. Like there's these other psychological benefits. But then the hard part is once you get to the goal, which is the hard part in life, is like you've maximized the goal, now what? And that's where it's like, okay, how do you balance? And then like give yourself the treat. But that's where mindfulness, I think, really starts to take hold, right? It's like when you have attained what you want, how do you maintain that? And that can only be done through balance of mindfulness, of like consistency right? Of being like, okay, let's just say weight, right? Like I weigh 170, I weigh 180, whatever, and I'm gonna fluctuate 3 to 4 pounds. That's not a bad thing, right? Necessarily, but understanding that it was because of this. Like this is starting to cause, for me, like that's how I've looked at it. It's like, oh, I had 2 more beers tonight, or I had a piece of chocolate that I normally don't have, or an extra bowl of cereal, or something like random, and then I'm like, oh, that's obviously a cause of that. It's not a bad thing. I just chose that today. Do I make an adjustment the next day?
And I think one thing that's a little bit misunderstood too about even like you mentioned the weight management piece though is like it's patterns over time, right? So like I always say like one food choice, one meal, one day of like kind of getting off your normal routine is going to make or break it, but it's patterns over time, right? And so those are some of the things too is kind of recognizing that whatever like goal you're trying to achieve is if we're just like a little more kind of slow and go with it, like meaning that if we just don't just make such drastic change right away, it's easier to stick with. That consistency piece of it is easier. It's harder to stick with it because it's not as, again, profoundly instantaneous.
Yeah, it's not instantaneous.
But I think the reward is that when you get to where you want to be, you don't have to change anything, right? So
I like that. But then do you give people a different mindset of the idea of that goal? Like in the sense, okay, so it's interesting because you're dealing with something that's like literal physical energy, right? Which I think is the thing that everybody wants more of, right? Just basic energy to do the things that you want to do today. You don't want to miss out on things. You want to live your life better. And the way you do that is through energy. But ironically, we think that energy comes from caffeine or an energy drink. So is there a way, because then the other one, like when you have a goal of losing weight, that's like pretty basic. Like you're just looking at a scale over time or whatever, right? Or a measurement or something like that. So do you have a way of, I don't know how to describe this, like not enticing people, but how do they think differently other than mindfulness? Because that's one way. Is there a way to like attain some sort of satisfaction the way that you do from, I guess you feel better, but you can't measure that.
I know, and that's what's hard, right? Because I really don't believe in the dieting approach for well-being, because diets are temporary. Like I tell people, if you want to do whatever diet, go for it. If you can stick with it for the rest of your life and it works, but it has to be something that's forever. And I think that's where I feel like this whole, again, it's very hard for me to like say, I say go for it if people are motivated, but I'm like, I always say, what are you going to do afterwards? Because I want to help you be able to sustain something.
Ironically, I'm like scared of a diet. Like I couldn't do a diet because like, no, I couldn't do it because that for me, it would be and this is just personally like, I just try to maintain eating generally the same things that make me feel good. Right. But like thinking about taking away everything seems really difficult. And
it's not sustainable.
Yeah, right? Like it just seems like something that I would do for if I was a movie star for 3 months when they get ready for a movie, right? Like they're like I went on this diet and like you ate 4 meals for 3 months, and it's like, well, that you're not doing that forever.
And I actually think that type of mindset actually sets us up for more unhealthy behaviors and patterns over time, and so
because you like let go in the other moments, right?
And then metabolically, it's really hard for our body too. You yo-yo up and down. You lose 10, you gain 20 back. I mean, whatever it may be. And so it's because we're not learning, right? We're getting down to the educational piece of like how is this fuel working in my body, and that's what again I really want to help my clients understand is like how is these food choices, right? Your patterns, your combinations, your balance, your macronutrient balance, all this stuff, right? It's not the same for every single person, but some of the concepts can be pretty similar. Meaning that if we sit here and we learn how to like not overwhelm our body in one situation, right? I mean, not everybody needs to go eat 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, but I'll tell you that if you eat 1 meal a day, I don't think metabolically things are going to be good long term, right? So
where do you tell people to pay attention throughout a day? This is for probably a personal thing. Like obviously they're paying throughout, but like when they're eating that meal, are you really saying, hey, really focus and see what happened over that next 3 to 4 hours? Are you saying see what's happening, what did you eat at lunch to pay attention to what happened that next morning? Like kind of how do you articulate that?
Are you referring to like how like from a gut perspective, like if like gut
gut and energy, especially energy, like that's what I've been thinking about a lot. Like where do you say that you'll start to notice the effects? You're like, hey, have this for breakfast. Try to limit this, or have this, and then pay attention to your mid-morning. Then try this, and then pay attention to your mid-afternoon, or even pay attention having this breakfast. Did that change the way that you saw your lunch? Like, is it every part?
I encourage a lot of like kind of just peer out every couple hours, like kind of like these self check-ins, right? Because a lot of people say to me, well, I don't eat breakfast because then I feel hungry sooner. Well, hunger is actually a really awesome cue that our body gives us that is oftentimes overlooked. People get annoyed by the hunger cue. Well, the hunger is like an evident sign. Hey, like something's up here. I need energy, right? I need something. And if it's true hunger, and hunger oftentimes like I'll get to you later. Well, if you ignore hunger, guess what? Those cues are going to go away. And then they're going to get very difficult to really understand if it's true through hunger, if it's not true hunger. So again, that's more of that intuitive, like it's there, but it can go away, right? Our bodies are highly adaptive. So if you sit there and you do the same pattern over and over, your body will adapt because it doesn't have a choice.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but but the body is also super can readapt, right? So if you're somebody who never, ate breakfast, for example, which is an easy one to go to, then you come to me and I say, okay, well, this is why breakfast is important and all these different capacities. Let's have a piece of sprouted toast with some smashed avocado, with some hemp seeds, a little diced hard-boiled egg on top. You got a lot of power, very little. That's not a very complicated meal, right? It's just having the ingredients on hand, so a little bit of availability there. But like less than 5 minutes, you can create this if you have some of that stuff.
It's mostly just the purchasing of some of those ingredients that wouldn't normally have.
But my point being is that there's so much more power and like sustainability in that choice than having just a piece of toast with jelly or a piece of toast with butter, let's say, right? Or a piece of fruit. If you had just a banana and went out the door, right? That doesn't have, it has, it's full of good nutrients, it has some fiber, it's all carbohydrate based mainly. So
I can literally feel my energy go away after that.
Yeah. So you're
like I could feel myself in 2 hours.
You're not pairing things together, so all of a sudden that breakfast choice of a banana, you're going to come back to me and say, this doesn't work. I'm starving in an hour. Well, yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, you are going to be starving because you didn't pair it correctly with other macronutrients to make it have more purpose and power behind it. So if you sat there and you put some more protein with it, you've added some healthy fat, and you have more of this combination, this easy balance that, again, give you lots of ideas that are very simple, all of a sudden that, meal can last 2 or 3 hours. I always tell my clients, like, you shouldn't feel hungry for 5, 6, 7 hours. I mean, our hunger should probably start to kind of resume every 3 to 4 hours. So if we eat a meal, self-check-in, to where you're trying to find a little bit more rhythm throughout the day. From a gut perspective, the gut thrives off of rhythm and routine. So from just like overall like gut symptom response, digestion.
I'm just thinking about the reverse when you just like crush a big meal and your stomach's like, why would you do that to me? And it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That, okay, I totally lost my train of thought on one part because you had brought up something that I really wanted to go over, but I do want to, because that meal that you just talked about sounded like it was high in fiber. Mm-hmm. Can we discuss fiber for a few minutes, and then I won't keep you too much longer, but I want to go into and maybe not fiber, but how you utilize fiber with everything else when you're talking about a diet, I guess, or not a diet, excuse me, diet wasn't the right word, what you're eating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so from the gut health world, this is what's cool too about evolving research. I mean, in a lot of things you see in the most recent years, like kind of a plant predominantly based approach to eating is really powerful for the gut microbiome. And the reason for that really is simply put is that it contains fiber. Fiber, I think a lot of people know that they should eat it, and a lot of people think that they're eating it, maybe not, but the thing
they don't. I'm going to be honest. We've talked to a lot of people, and if you say fiber, they think it makes you poop.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess you're right. I think that maybe I'm a little more sensitized because I'm kind of people that say, yeah, I know, or they've been told not to eat fiber too, maybe because of some of the GI problems they're having. So it gets to be.
This is anecdotal, but is there an age that you found that people kind of come in with a fiber? So this is my personal opinion. I find that people, when I have the discussion with fiber with people over 35, is like not as scary anymore. But anybody under 35 is like, fiber? Like what? Mm-hmm. Like they almost like, they're like, you have fiber? You like it's in there?
Yeah.
Do you find that there was an age that
I think probably a bit older or probably more attuned to it. I think that, again, I guess lack of education. I don't think people understand what the role and benefit of fiber is. I mean, the amount of people that come in with like constipation, like not pooping, right? Like not pooping's not good, right? I mean, if people have problems forever and they're like, oh, I can't
Miralax.
And then I ask them what they're, exactly, just take Miralax. I'm like, oh my gosh, people. Or they're like, I'm taking a fiber capsule. I'm like, do you understand that fiber capsule, okay, yes, it's fiber and it's maybe good fiber or whatever, but it's like a few grams out of the total amount that you need. So kind of a crazy statistic I think that's pretty mind-boggling is that the dietary guidelines in 2020 is what they were, indicated that like 90% and 97%, so I think 97% of men and I think like 95% of women do not consume the recommended amount of fiber.
Not even close.
And so it's crazy. And so then all of a sudden, if you hear that, and then people are like, okay, well, then they just pile it in too fast, and then your gut's really going to hate you. And so it's a matter of like learning like how to incorporate fiber. So again, why it's important to incorporate fiber, how to incorporate fiber, and then the multitude of benefits that can occur from having fiber. Like fiber literally is at the core of like gut health, I mean, and it really, really is. And that's by eating fruits and vegetables, which, again, if people aren't eating fiber, that means they're not eating fruits and vegetables, which there's the answer.
The word was, as David would say, GI distress. Because I got super into the idea of, we're just trying to understand people's problems, I guess, is generally like my goal. And I'm not the scientist. And I like history, so I like to understand other components of health history. So, but GI distress, the idea that people would go from no fiber to 30 grams of fiber, which is the daily recommended amount, 25 to 30, depending on male, female. And like, if you do that, go beyond bloated, you go to another level of pain.
Yeah.
Because your body was not ready for it.
No, for sure. And so then it's, people's conditions, different things they've had. Maybe they've had a bowel resection. I mean, there's all different things that can happen where maybe they have to alter their fiber intake.
Yeah.
But I have all different strategies with people of like, rather than no fiber, like let's talk about, I say the word like pre-digestible fiber. So like softer fibers, like you can put foods in different fashion. So going from like
explain
raw,
that a little bit.
So like having like raw, I go back to here, I'm talking about broccoli all day long, but like
Love.
raw broccoli to like steamed or roasted, right? When you steam or roast something, it changes the fiber structure, right? So a lot of times, like just softening it can kind of make the gut maybe work a little bit better with it. So it's still fiber, but like the fiber strands kind of change.
Okay, so from a layman's term, what you're saying is that when I eat the raw broccoli, that thing is running all the way to the colon without getting broken down.
Right.
And if I steam it, it's got at least some of it's going to have been broken down through that steaming process. Might be absorbed earlier, or it'll at least be broken down less to be
broken down,
so
yes.
The bacteria won't be able to be eaten by the bacteria.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you take an apple and you peel it, right? You don't eat the skin. While you're getting rid of some of the fiber, not all the fiber, but some of the more kind of
hard. Yeah, it's the one that's going to make it all the way down.
Right.
So, is that a right way to say that? How else would you say that? Like, I feel like it's like getting to the colon a lot quicker. Not quicker. It's getting there in a more fibrous.
The soluble fiber is a little bit more kind of you have soluble and insoluble fiber, right? And so the soluble fiber is one that kind of slows things, and then the insoluble is kind of like moves things along a little more quickly, right? And so the idea is, rather than people getting hooked up on like what foods have what soluble, insoluble, like just eat fiber, like just get it, because we're not getting enough, right? And so the idea is to incorporate getting the fiber, but it's so important to understand how, like, if your gut isn't used to it, there's all different tips and strategies to help people be able to tolerate it better. Even a person like on a low fiber diet for whatever reason that they need to be on it, maybe it's something, post surgery or this or that or whatever, or maybe a condition that they have, I will still tell them that low fiber doesn't mean no fiber. So it's helping them understand like what their gut can then tolerate as an amount, right? Because again, if fiber is really at this core of like helping make the microbiome kind of be in its steadiest state or healthiest state. And the reason for that is because fiber, because it doesn't absorb in the small intestine, right? It passes on through to the large intestine, and that's where all the bacteria are. Fiber produce what are known as short-chain fatty acids. So short-chain fatty acids are like these byproducts that are produced from fiber that actually kind of are like anti-inflammatory. And so they produce all these like anti-inflammatory response to the body, which is going to help systemically. So it's something that if we don't have fiber, we're not producing the amount of short-chain fatty acids that we need, which then can actually make our bodies more inflamed.
Eat fiber.
Yeah, right.
Wow, that was that was a great description. Honestly, I don't really, we could talk for like 4 more hours.
I know.
Because I really have appreciated, one, I just like how you describe everything. It's super entertaining. And so I got in some deep conversations recently, and this is still deep, but this is like, I think more my area. Like I'm not as far into like the research getting into specific areas. I was I wouldn't say less qualified, but this is because you make it very user friendly. I think it's like, and it's very relatable to what potentially I know I go through some of these, but then we've heard a lot of the things that people go through, and obviously you've heard a lot of them. And so I think a lot of people can relate to these issues, and I think a lot of times they don't know where to go.
Absolutely.
So with that, where would be, okay, so somebody has distress from both sides. So they're having a irritable bowel disease type of thing, not even that far, they just have discomfort. Where would you recommend they start, like as we finish this, where would you recommend they start their journey? Obviously the internet, probably not, okay, how do I describe this? The internet gives you information. It's not all bad. We try to provide information where we can, but that's why we're doing this as a podcast now, was I was like, I am meeting with professionals that know what they're talking about. Where should people start? And then where would they go after they start would be like a first recommendation.
Yeah, I think the thing with the internet is like I kind of look at it as like an outline. Like if you, because people are going to go there, you can tell them not to, they're going to go,
Yeah.
right? And so if you want it from like an outline, like basic, okay, get this, and then when it gets down to the nitty gritty and you're feeling like just I don't know what to do, right? That's where I think seeking out guidance, like myself as dietitian, can be really helpful.
But do you go to what's the methodology to find a dietitian, in the sense, do we try to reach out directly to dietitians as much as possible?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
for the vast majority, dietitians are in all different parts of, in the kind of the, I guess, different arenas, if you will. And so I'm a private practice dietitian, and so I get referrals from people in the community, but you can also just get a hold of me and just come see me directly, right? So if I was in a clinical setting in a hospital, obviously it's a different scenario, but being in private practice and being able to educate people one-on-one, they can just find me. And so there's dietitians. I think the biggest thing is finding somebody who, whatever ailment you have from a nutritional standpoint, you seek out somebody with that passion,
specialty.
expertise. Because it's like I guess I can consult on a lot of different nutritional topics, but I really have my core things that I feel like I'm the expert in, and gut health is one of them, and a lot of it's because of the time and energy, and I think again when you're really passionate about something, like you want to learn and then you want to help, and so helping people in this arena, oh my gosh, so rewarding. So yeah, I think finding somebody and within the specialty area is really important.
And then would you say, I've been thinking about this now that you're talking about the holistic side, it's almost good to pick one thing and then they can start to recommend potentially the other things that are beneficial holistically as well. So not necessarily like refer directly, but I've just been thinking about the first step might be, I hadn't originally thought the first step would be go to the dietitian, like mine is a chiropractor. Mm-hmm. That's like my go-to to kind of to heal my body, to get it in the first position. But it's really interesting because now I'm like, oh, I'm the opposite. I think I should be going to see you to say, okay, maybe this is what's inflamed or this is what's going on. And then these are potentially the other things that could help you.
Yeah.
It's I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit partial, right? And a little bit to the nutrition piece, but I really think it's at the core of our being. And I don't know how it can't be when everything we put into our mouth has to be utilized, right? So like everything we put in has to go through a process to try to be broken down, absorbed, digested, not digested, so on and so forth. And so I think it's like a little bit, what's the word? Just underappreciated maybe, like what the digestive tract does and then the things that we put into our body. So again, I believe nutrition's at the core, and I think it's because of what I've seen through my clients over the years that gives me strong, I think, evidence to support that as well. So
you've sold me. That's
Great.
That's what
that wasn't the point.
No, not at all. Not at all. Like,
yeah.
I'm just saying this, like, I'm probably booking a session after this. This was like the information for everybody else to have. I'm going to gather my own from you as well. This was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending time with me. I hope that people watch this just to watch the information that you presented and the way that you presented it. This was fantastic. Wow. So I appreciate you for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. And I think what you're doing is great because really in the end, I think we're both, trying to help give people credible information. And that's what I think is lacking. And if we can make things more simple for people, right? And that's, your target audience is to give them information. If we keep it more simple, we're more likely maybe to try. And so I think that's, that's something, and it's tangible things that can help improve, all parts of us. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. See you guys.